Alright, so I had a lot of people ask me about my deck that I like to play called Tron Walkers, and this is just a brief overview of the deck. As of right now, my sideboard, the main things I tend to use for my sideboard is Ugin the Spirit Dragon. You know, for anybody that's playing elves or something. Just it's just a catch-all. And where's the other one? There's a Sandra. Yep, there's Sandra to board wipe. But that's typically if I'm playing against people who are playing decks that are super heavy on creatures, mainly low defense creatures. But let's go into the deck. We got 9 Planeswalkers, starting off with Jace, Liliana, Nahiri the Harbinger, Narset Transcendent, Narset of the Ancient Way, and Nicol Bolas. And Razrek, Samut the Tested, and Tamiyo. So, I've done a lot of thinking on these Planeswalkers, and the main reason why I have the ones that I did choose is because they can end the game on one turn or set my opponent back enough to where I can go ahead and say, yes, there's a way for me to win this game. I just have to figure out how to win this game now. The only one that's kind of iffy, honestly, about, making you win the game is the Narset of the Ancient Way. But because this deck does have a lot of filter cards in it, usually if Narset comes into play, it allows you to remove a threat off the battlefield. And then if it ultimates, all the cycle cards that you'll see us go through start dealing 2 damage to a target that we choose. Dragon God is just an amazing planeswalker because it copies every other planeswalker in play. And with how we're playing this deck with a doubling season, the first turn this planeswalker hits the battlefield, it can ultimate. So whether that be that you want to use its -8 here to win the game because your opponent doesn't control any legendary permanents or legendary permanents. It's just an excellent card to use. And Razorek, he's one of the planeswalkers I like to have the most fun with because the fact that he makes you flip coins to see how many turns you get based on what comes up heads, it's extremely hilarious because sometimes you're gonna get 5 turns, other times you might only get 1 turn. But that doesn't change the fact that if he goes off, your opponent's gonna be in a world of hurt because you're just 1 card away from winning the game. Samut. Typically, if I use Samut, I go ahead and fetch 2 Planeswalkers. 90% of the time, if I do not already have it casted or it's in my graveyard, I'm going for Jace, Architect of Thought, and maybe Dragon God. It just depends on if I have Emrakul in hand. If I do have Emrakul in hand, instead of going for Jace, I'm gonna go for Tamiyo and maybe Razarek or Dragon Guy. It just depends. Like, as soon as these Planeswalkers ultimate, because doubling season's in play, it's pretty much game over for your opponent. Alright, let's go into the enchantments. We just have doubling season and Oath of Nissa. With the doubling season, any Planeswalker that comes into play has double the loyalty counters right off the bat. So because that is the case, what we're trying to do is get this on the battlefield and then cast any Planeswalker and have it resolve. And then it should make it to where we can go ahead and end the game. And the Oath of Nissa, this just allows us to be able to use any color mana to cast Planeswalkers. So, like some of you guys might have looked ahead and noticed, we play Tron lands in this deck. So that would allow us to be able to use our Tron mana to go ahead and cast Planeswalkers. As far as instants, we only have Manamorphose. And the reason why I play them is because of the fact that it's basically an extra card that's out of your deck. Because if you look at it, you use 2 mana to cast it. It gives you 2 mana of any color, which sets me up for my Planeswalkers and everything. But then it also makes me draw cards, so I honestly count this as a card that's not in the deck. Just something that sets my mana. So when I'm trying to do the odds with this deck, I normally think about it like it has only what, 56 cards? Alright, let's go into the lands. So, Forest, Interplanar Beacon, that was. As soon as I saw this card, I snatched it up because, since I was trying to work on this deck for over 2 years, just on and off, trying to make something fun and modern that would be competitive. When I saw this card drop, I definitely picked up 4 copies of it. The Forest, they're just what's in there for now because I might change them out later, but like everybody know, Ghost Quarter runs amok in Modern, so it doesn't hurt to, have some basic lands in there. Now the artifacts. The artifacts are honestly almost the exact same as Tron, just spheres and stars. The difference here though is the navigator's compass, which in a way kind of works like a prophetic prism, but it also allows you to gain life instead of draw a card. The reason why I want the life gain is in modern, or in any format really, if you win with 1 life or 20 life, it's still a win. The main thing though in modern is there tends to be a lot of damage done real quick, and I'm trying to buy enough time that way I can go ahead and get to, Ultima Planeswalkers and play the cards that I want to play. Because this deck doesn't stop your opponent from playing their deck. The only people that it might mess with a lot is people that play control. Because if you ultimate this Planeswalker, your control opponents can no longer counter your spells. And because that is the case, it's pretty much a wrap for them if they're playing control. The Prophetic Prisms, they're just a draw card and once again help set my mana. They normally come in pretty handy. And creatures. I only really consider it one creature because the only one that I normally ever cast and actually hits the battlefield is Emrakul. And most of the time I'm not actually hard casting it. I'm either using Architect of Thought because doubling season's in play and I hit the ultimate ability to cast it. Or I'm using the Tron lines because I happen to get to 15. But that's very, very rare. So before I can cast Emrakul, usually some other win condition hits the battlefield. The Street Wraith, these cards, they're just in there because I'm cycling again. So pair the Street Wraiths with the Metamorphose. That's 8 cards that are not in the deck. So what? I'm down to 52 cards. So that makes me a whole lot more consistent than most other decks out there. Or that's the way I like to look at it. Like I had mentioned before, the sideboard is it's something I'm playing with right now because it doesn't have to be a specific sideboard, and like you guys notice, it's just a bunch of planeswalkers. And since it's just a bunch of planeswalkers, I can, add in extra cards that I want here and there. So the sideboard I'm still working on, but hopefully you guys can see how this deck can come together and, be really fun to play with. Especially knowing the fact that this deck can actually win against some of the more competitive decks in Modern. Alright, and that's it for me. I will be back and I will make another video at some point later, hoping to demonstrate this deck to you guys and show you guys how I like to enjoy playing Magic.